to Tel Aviv in Israel, where Israeli president is giving a press briefing.
Suffered thousands and thousands of missiles. We were telling the world every time, in every round, that this is impossible. And the world kept on repeating the slogan, disproportionate Israeli response. Look at the quotes from world community leaders or world leaders and foreign offices. Disproportionate response. Every time this havoc was inflicted on these villages and towns and Sderot, we were told disproportionate response. I'm asking myself whether the international community and the international media is now understanding what a false interpretation of the reality there was. Do they now believe us that we are faced with one of the most cruel enemies on earth, clearly ISIS? I want to tell the story of Vivian Silver. She's very well known in Israel. Vivian Silver, age 74, probably hostage in Gaza. She was one of the biggest well-known peace activists in the country. She advocated peace between Israelis and Palestinians, Jews and Muslims, endlessly. She founded an NGO called AGIC, A-G-A-I-C. She was a great leader. She disappeared. She was from Kibbutz Be'eri. So a fuzzy 30-second video released by Hamas to show that they returned an Israeli woman and her child is a simple distortion of the worst moral equivalent. So we are not retaliating. We are targeting. We are targeting the enemy in order to uproot the capability of the enemy to carry on with this campaign of destroying Israel, trying to destroy it as part of an empire of evil which has its claws all around us, from north, with Hezbollah, from the south, from Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Look around us in the entire region. Look at the havoc that they have created everywhere Iran has touched. In Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, in Lebanon. This is exactly what I spoke about in the joint session of Congress in the middle of July, where I explained that it was always our dream to make peace with our neighbors, but we cannot accept terror. Unfortunately, the world has seen the worst atrocity of terror in quite some time. So Hamas has carried out war crimes, crimes against humanity. It has chosen to conduct its war against Israel, hiding, as always, within populated areas, using the population as a shield, using mosques, shops, houses, anything of civilian lives as their center of activity. And that is why we're operating to uproot this infrastructure. We are very cautious in the way we operate. The IDF uses all the means at its disposal in order to reduce harm to the population. For example, many resources are invested in gathering intelligence, in trying to locate the enemy separately from civilian population, in evacuating the civilian population from the center of the battle, in warning citizens, in monitoring humanitarian situation. But Israel will defend its people and do whatever it takes with an iron fist to change the reality. I want to thank President Joe Biden wholeheartedly and the American administration and the American Congress for their unanimity in protecting and supporting the state of Israel and the people of Israel. America is a great friend. President Biden is a great friend, standing by with us in our hour of need. Over the last few days, I've spoken with numerous world leaders who've expressed their dismay, their disgust, their outrage at the tragic attack and its consequences. I believe it's now time also to hear religious leaders all over the world express and condemn this horrific attack. And I also believe that the press around the world needs to look at the reality. They must declare and call Hamas a terrorist organization without ifs and buts, without explanation. If families in Toronto were massacred in the same way, I'm sure the press would call it massacre by terrorists, by terrorist organizations. These are not freedom fighters. These are terrorists, the worst enemies of humanity that one can imagine. I call upon the international community unequivocally, make clear and loud condemnation of Hamas, just as you condemned ISIS. They are one and the same. Make clear that Hamas carries full responsibility and accountability for the well-being of the hostages and demand their immediate release with no conditions at all. Support Israel in words and in deeds. Designate Hamas in its entirety as a terrorist body. Finally, I want to say that the people of Israel have always shown their capability of getting up from the darkest hour and rising as lions and fighting back and showing incredible spirit of unity and friendship and solidarity. I see it all over the nation. I see it in the huge amount of volunteering, in the huge amount of mobilization to the army, in the huge amount of doing good to each other, of helping each other in so many consequences and so many spheres of life. I encourage my people, I bless the people of Israel. We shall definitely overcome. We shall definitely be victorious. We've always done so. It will take time, but we shall overcome and we shall be victorious. I met the families of the hijacked and kidnapped citizens of Israel. It was extremely tragic and extremely painful. So many people live in a reality of a nightmare, not knowing the whereabouts and the real facts of their loved ones. Each and every one of you can imagine that. You've met families. Israel will do whatever it can to bring them back home as soon as possible, safely. But this requires an immediate call to the international community not to sit idly by and do whatever it takes to bring them back home immediately. As President of the State of Israel, as I ask you all to tell the stories of the victims, I ask you all to remember it, because there is a short-sightedness in the cycle of media and news, but the pain will remain forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy, Times of Israel.
Hi. You've spoken with a lot of world leaders over the past few days, gotten a lot of support.
And wait, just say your name and where you're from.
Sorry, I'm Amy from the Times of Israel. How concerned are you that support will wane?
So that was the President of Israel in a press briefing. And there were a couple of things that he highlighted. Firstly, called on the international community to condemn Hamas, just as they condemned ISIS. He talks about how Israelis have always risen from the darkest of hours and come out of it with unity and solidarity. He talks about war crime, crime against humanity, and Hamas hiding in populated areas and civilian lives as shield, using civilians as shield. And he claims that Israel is very cautious about the way they deal with the civilian population on the other hand.